Have you ever seen a movie that you felt like it was a masterpiece, but feel rather surprised that it's not being treated as a masterpiece? Of course you have! With all the films made in the world, not all of them would get the amount of attention they deserve. Even in the long run, one movie would be big when it came out, and then would just fade away afterwards as if it never happened. This is exactly why they are known to be the underrated, the underappreciated, the underdogs, the hidden gems of cinema. However, when it comes to animated movies, they are a lot more fascinating to discover, because you're not just experiencing a movie, but an entire artistic world that was made so many years ago that has yet to have its time to shine. And that's exactly what this is all about. Now for this top 10, I'm not just ranking these films by how good they are, but also by their popularity, or lack of. The better they are and the less attention they're getting, the higher they'll be on the list. Also, I won't be putting in anything too recent. Like, it's gotta have some age so we can fully tell where their spot is in our modern culture, and if they deserve more than that. I'm Animat, and these are the top 10 underrated animated films.
I am on my way. I can go the distance. I don't care how far. Said I'll be strong. I know every mile will be worth my while.
Let me just start this off by saying that as it is all about the underrated, don't be too surprised if you haven't heard about all the movies on this list. Like this one. Twice Upon a Time is a film that is truly defined by its uniqueness. Seriously, the charm comes from the fact that its animation and comedy cannot be found anywhere else. The way the movie tells its story of two unlikely heroes who have to stop a madman from spreading never-ending nightmares all over the world is by putting a style called lumage, which is like cutout stop motion, but made to look like moving stained glass windows. The result gives the animation a strong, vibrant look with a lot of creative possibilities and even having the characters play around in different environments. On top of that, it also has a unique form of storytelling that is mainly driven by improv. You see, instead of having celebrities, the cast consists of actors who specialize in improvisation, making up the dialogue as they roll along, and thankfully, it's noticeable how they were capable of working well with each other, so it ends up being a fair trade to get some funny people instead of recognizable names, with the exception of Paul Frees and the original voice of Garfield, Lorenzo Music.
If there's something that tells them that they don't have something,
yeah,
and if there's a clock,
it's a clock,
and they watch it,
and
it tells them
the time
that they don't have.
That's simple, isn't it? Get it?
Oh,
this is too easy.
It's a movie that knows how to stand out from the crowd. Like, quite literally, there hasn't been any other animated film quite like this. So, with that said, how is it that this never got any major attention? Especially when it has George Lucas, fresh from his Star Wars fame, attached as a producer. Well, you'll probably have to blame the distributors for that. The filmmakers were hoping that the distributors can say that they can give it a wide release and they can give it lots of marketing, but instead...
Well, let me just say, tough shit!
Oh! Forgot to mention about that part. You see, there's also an adult version of the film where the villain Botch would constantly swear throughout the movie, so sorry you had to hear that.
Asshole.
Back then, the distributors at the time, the Ladd Company, thought it would be a better idea to give The Right Stuff a worldwide release and Twice just a small limited one. That ended up becoming a disaster, with not only both films flopping, but both the Ladd Company and the studio that made the movie, Cordy Films, shut down, leaving Twice with no platform to stand on and ultimately left forgotten for many years, except for a few TV screenings and home releases. But as time would move on, if Ralph and Mum weren't messing with it, the film did start to find its audience, and it's slowly gaining a cult status. They may not be publicly known to be heroes just yet, but maybe their fate might not be hopeless after all.
we're not hopeless. We can do it. Even if we're outnumbered, we're heroes, you know?
I'll believe it when I see you.
Well, you just watch, you'll see it.
I am on my way. I can go the distance.
If you're a longtime viewer of my work, then you probably know that I've already talked about this plenty of times before. But in this case, it's worth repeating. Out of all the Disney films out there, The Rescuers Down Under would have to be the most action-packed. The one that defines an epic adventure where the Rescue Aid Society's top agents, Bianca and Bernard, set off to the Australian outback to save a kid from a poacher who would stop at nothing to capture an endangered giant eagle. Since it was released around the same time as some of Disney's most legendary films like Beauty and the Beast and The Lion King, this movie actually comes with some of their great strengths. For one, the animation is beautiful, perfectly capturing the intensity of the life-threatening mission the characters have to face, and even the sense of wonder with the grand scale of the outback, resulting in one of the best openings for a Disney movie. On top of that, it also helped bring out a fun cast of characters both old and new. Bianca and Bernard share the same charm from the previous film, and have some good chemistry with some of the new guys like Wilbur and Jake. Even Percival C. McLeach is often considered to be an underrated Disney villain himself.
That's no secret, boy. You see, I already got the father.
In a way, it's weird how it never got such a prominent legacy, especially when it has all the right materials, or at least most, to be among Disney's best. Heck, this actually got released at the same time as some of their biggest hits, so why is it that it didn't get any of the same treatment? Well, I mean, let's be honest, did anybody really ask for a sequel to The Rescuers? Now, I'm not saying that it's a bad movie at all. It's just that the original is one of Disney's more forgettable films. Sure, it also has some nice animation and an adventurous story, but the pacing is just way too slow for the kind of film it is. Plus the fact that it was released during the dark period where they have yet to get their groove back after Walt Disney passed away. So it shows that the film tries to capture the same magic as the classics, but couldn't. What this meant for the sequel was that it was too late for Disney to discover that people didn't want another Rescuers, and Down Under ended up becoming both a critical and financial failure. Since then, whenever Disney would bring up their time in the early 1990s, they would only reflect upon their really successful ones and sweep Down Under, well, under the rug. However, people do notice that it does have its place in cinema history, as it is the first ever movie where everything you see on screen was made digitally. And seriously, it is extremely rare for Disney to actually go and make a sequel to one of their movies, especially during that time. I mean, did they ever consider to make a follow-up to any of their films other than The Rescuers? Those don't count! But I will say though, it seems rather fitting that one of Disney's underrated films would actually be set down under. Maybe we'll see this movie have its chance to fly sky high.
Well done, mate.
I am on my way. I can go the distance.
Now, when I made this list, I tried my best to make sure that all animated films here are treated equally. But let's face it, some animated films are more equal than others. Based on the classic novel by George Orwell, Animal Farm was the first official animated feature made in Britain, and they went off with a powerful start. What this movie did best, in contrast to most other animated films based on a book, is that it literally goes by the book in order to stay true with both the story and its message. Because of this, the film is capable of bringing to the screen what made the novella a timeless classic in literature. The characters, for example, are highly memorable, all of which come from one talented voice actor, Maurice Denham. even with a large cast of animals, they all present a vital role in the farm, and the film prominently presents the unforgettable ruthlessness of the villains like Mr. Jones and Napoleon.
The revolution is now complete. We have no more use for that song. Singing it is now forbidden, under penalty of death.
On top of that, the movie delivers its own approach to the story by giving some smooth Disney-like animation, taking itself more seriously than a cartoon of its time by depicting the characters in a semi-realistic manner, making it look more believable how a bunch of animals can take over a farm. Like I said before, among all the animated films that I've seen that are actually based on a book, this one is actually not only one of the best, but also one of the most faithful. Like, for the most part, this can actually fit in the category of a visual representation of what happened page by page. But the question remains, how is it that such a great movie that has some significant history in animation that is based on a popular book end up becoming overlooked? Well, the thing is with Animal Farm is that this was not really made to be a film adaptation of the George Orwell book, but rather, this was created as an artistic weapon in a war. Despite being made in England, the movie was actually funded by the CIA. At the time, the world was at the start of the Cold War when the Americans started to feud with Russia. So what the CIA intended with this movie is to deliver Orwell's message from what he said in the book and show people what's wrong with the Russians' communistic ideologies at the time. This also explains why the movie changed the ending in order to deliver hope that communism and the Russians can be defeated. In a way, it was a product of its time as a motivator to go and fight the enemy. However, the Cold War is long over now, so no Cold War and no communism to battle. There's no point in showing this around. Is the DVD okay? Crap, I think I hit my lighting. Yeah. Oof. My lighting stand got a big hit, but hold on a sec. Is the DVD okay? I can get another light stand. Is the DVD okay? Yeah, alright, the DVD's okay. It's a great book, it's a great movie, and overall, it's a great story for both 4 legs and 2 legs.
All animals are equal.
Hey, remember when this was known as the Disney film that's actually not a Disney film? Throughout the 1990s, almost every animated film wanted to be like Disney. At the time, there have been more movies that tried to emulate the Disney formula than actual Disney movies that have the formula. Unsurprisingly, many have tried and embarrassingly failed. Even Don Bluth himself tried to make some Disney-style animated musicals and, well...
They're dead. Dead. Very, very dead.
But then came Anastasia, which ended up becoming one of the very few animated films at the time that tried to copy Disney, and it worked! In fact, it ended up becoming Don Bluth and Gary Goldman's most successful film. Loosely based on the legend of the Grand Duchess Anastasia, the 2-time Oscar-nominated film tells the story of an orphan girl who pursues to discover the past that she completely forgot about. But with the help of a couple of con men, she would learn that she might be a part of something far bigger than she could ever imagine. While it does try to be a Disney film, what makes this movie strong is how every aspect makes it stand well on its own, and can even separate itself from Disney. The story is engaging, it features Don Bluth's signature masterfully crafted animation, the songs are unforgettable, and the characters are well written and lovable. Even the comic relief is actually entertaining.
Oh, sure, blame the bat. What the heck, we're easy targets.
What are you muttering about?
If you're an animation fan, then I'm sure it must have happened at least once where you have overheard someone refer to Anastasia as a Disney film. Now, rather if you actually did go out and pull out the "well, actually" card, that may depend on the situation. However, nowadays, that thing seems to be a thing of the past, because now it looks like there are more people that do understand that Anastasia is a movie from Fox and not from Disney. And that's exactly why it's not as popular as it used to be. In the mid-1990s, Fox was a little more serious to step into the animation game and created Fox Animation Studios, with the hopes that Don Bluth and Gary Goldman can be their driving force. Sure, they were off to a good start with Anastasia, but it came crashing down immediately afterwards with layoffs and their next movie, Titan AE, being a box office bomb. A few days after that film's release, the studio completely shut down. Nowadays, whenever Fox would talk about their animated features, they never look back at anything of their hand-drawn works of the past, and would only mention about the stuff with Blue Sky Studios and the time when they were distributing DreamWorks animation films. It's like it stresses them out when they have to talk about anything that happened before Ice Age.
You know, sir, really, you should watch your blood pressure. My nephew Izzy just keeled over one day, mid-mango. Stress, it's a killer, sir.
But like Anya herself, memories will start to float by where the past is starting to get remembered again. It was even partly inspired to become a Broadway musical. While it may not have the legacy of a Disney film, it definitely has the same nostalgic impact to many people, and watching this film again is now considered more a journey to the past.
At last. I am on my way. I can go the distance.
For this one, instead of putting in just one movie, I decided to go and put 4 in one group, because they all actually have some strong similarities. They're all released around the same time, like between the late 1990s and the early 2000s. They're all hand-drawn animated, and they're from DreamWorks. Yes, I'm putting in DreamWorks Animation's hand-drawn animated films in one spot, including The Prince of Egypt, The Road to El Dorado, Spirit Stallion of the Cimarron, and Sinbad, Legend of the Seven Seas. While the narratives of each movie and its execution of storytelling may be vastly different than one another, a lot of their strengths are what made them defined as an early DreamWorks movie. They all have interesting and complex characters worth following throughout their adventure. Their stories offer us grand journeys in amazing worlds from an unseen perspective. The musicals have beautiful and memorable songs, and the animation is some of the best of its time.
You drank seawater, didn't you?
Oh, come on!
I'm not coming on!
Now, the reason why I put them here on the list is because how good they are as movies are different from one another. They can range from being animated masterpiece to just being considered decent. As for their fame, it depends on which movie you're talking about. Like El Dorado has a prominent cult status, while Sinbad is virtually forgotten.
Oh, I would have been fine. I always am.
Nowadays, DreamWorks Animation is considered one of the biggest names in animation, like almost synonymous with Disney and Pixar, with a large collection of movies that consist of box office blockbusters, fan favorites, and major franchises. So why is it that they don't talk much about their early works as much as their computer animated films? Well, like Fox, DreamWorks aren't necessarily big fans of talking about their past. With the exception of The Prince of Egypt, which ended up winning an Oscar for the song When You Believe, the rest, like El Dorado, Spirit, and Sinbad, didn't do well when they were released. Critics were not big fans of them, and they ended up becoming box office flops. Around that time, their biggest movie was Shrek, which was not only critically praised, but the movie alone almost made as much as all of their hand-drawn films combined at the box office, influencing the decision to no longer make 2D films and stick to just creating computer-animated features. Hey, come on guys, what's wrong with looking back at your older works? I mean, if people still have fond memories and still enjoy them to this day, then there should be nothing to be ashamed of, right?
I'm Matt, and this is the top 10 best Disney sidekicks.
Then again, when you do look back, you tend to forget that you have changed and improved a lot since then. Seriously, was I wearing a Mario shirt? Even in a time of ogres, pandas, and dragons, let's not forget that they are still the lovable studio that brought us horses, legends, miracles, and pure gold.
So sign on to New Gods for Paradise.
Next up is not really a movie, but rather a tale. A tale of a man and a monster. While this may be released in the second half of the 1990s, it's the closest thing Disney had ever done that has the same quality of their movies from the first half. The Hunchback of Notre Dame may have a few quirks, but for the stuff that it did right, it did it perfectly. For starters, it's possibly Disney's riskiest animated film they've made by tackling serious themes such as lust and religion. But the story doesn't deviate from talking about its true message and what Quasimodo wants the most, which is to be accepted among the people he watches below, giving both a dark edge and a strong heart. When it comes to the movie's other aspects, it can be debated as some of Disney's finest works. The animation is top-notch, even by their standards, and the power that the musical numbers hold make those moments feel like a major event.
Up there, strolling by the sand, taste the morning out there.
On top of that, you also got some great and well-written characters to follow, like the introverted Quasimodo, the clever Esmeralda, the charismatic Phoebus, the stone-hearted Frollo, and many more. Oh, and the gargoyles too, who are probably out of place here, but still entertaining in their own right.
I thought he'd never leave. I'll be spitting feathers for a week.
Well, that's what you get for sleeping with your mouth open.
Go scare a nun.
Now, I just want to clarify, though, that I did put this one a little lower on the list because this is not really as overlooked as many of the other animated films on the list. Considering that there are plenty of Disney fans out there that would even say that this is one of their favorite films, and not only would they go as far and claim that Frollo is one of the best Disney villains, but Hellfire is one of the best villain songs in movies. So, with the way that this made quite an impact onto some people, why is it that Disney is not really treating it like one of their classics? Well, despite the fact that it does have a bit of a fan base, it's hard to really say who this movie is trying to please. While some adore it for being one of Disney's darker films, that aspect is also its own curse. By their standards, it's a little too extreme to have a movie that would prominently display the questionable morality of Christianity, or have a villain be fueled by sexual urges. With a movie like that, they can't really market it the same way they would to something like The Lion King or Frozen. So it's more for the sake of their family-friendly image that they don't want to say that they could push the envelope to the point of maybe upsetting sensitive parents. And if being too dark for Disney executives isn't enough, fans of the original novel by Victor Hugo would say that it's too lighthearted. Compared to the book, the characters are way too nice to each other, there's a lot less significant deaths, and of course, the addition of comic relief gargoyles. So overall, it's a movie that's actually hard to please. I mean, how could you describe this film to someone?
The story of the Hunchback of Notre Dame is a twisted tale of a disfigured man whose guardian lusts for a certain gypsy and wishes death to all her kind. Now Quasimodo must stop Judge Frollo before he would go and burn down all of Paris so that no more innocent souls would get killed by his twisted definition of justice.
She was ooh-la-la, and she was
But regardless of who it wants to satisfy, just like Quasimodo himself, all this movie wants is to be accepted like any other Disney film. And maybe someday...
Do you see what I see?
No. Yes. Yes!